The richest man in the city collapsed in his own hotel lobby, and while everyone else pulled out their phones to record his humiliation, one woman knelt down and touched his face like he mattered. Adrian Cross had never felt anything more dangerous than Maya's kindness, because the last person who looked at him that way had died in his arms when he was 8 years old. It's so great to have you here. If you're ready to dive into today's captivating story, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from around the world. I love connecting with viewers from everywhere. Speaking of which, I've got another fascinating story lined up for you tomorrow that I think you'll find just as compelling as today's tale. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. But enough about tomorrow, let's jump into today's story. The silence in Adrian Cross's penthouse was the expensive kind, thick as velvet curtains and twice as suffocating. He sat motionless at his dining table, a mahogany monument that could seat 12 but tonight held only one, him, and the cold remains of a dinner that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. His phone buzzed. Another message from his assistant about tomorrow's meetings, another reminder that his empire needed him even when he felt hollow as an abandoned building. Adrian's fingers traced the rim of his untouched wine glass, the crystal singing a lonely note that echoed through his $30 million prison. The irony wasn't lost on him. Adrian Cross, the man who could buy entire city blocks with a signature, who had graced magazine covers as America's most eligible bachelor, couldn't buy himself a single genuine conversation. Tonight's dinner had been particularly brutal. 3 potential business partners, all smiles and handshakes, all talking around him rather than to him. He'd watched their eyes calculating his net worth while their mouth spoke of partnership and mutual benefit. What did you expect? He asked himself, the same question that haunted him most nights. You built these walls brick by brick. Adrian rose from the table, his movements precise and controlled as always. His reflection caught in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, tall, imposing, handsome in that sharp-edged way that photographed well but felt cold to the touch. Even his own reflection looked like it was keeping secrets. His phone rang. Mr. Cross. His assistant's voice was professionally cheerful. The Hartman Group confirmed tomorrow's lunch meeting, and the charity gala RSVP deadline. Cancel everything, Adrian said quietly. A pause. Sir. Everything. For tomorrow. I need. He stopped, unsure how to finish. I need what? To remember what it feels like to be human? Just cancel it, Linda. 23 floors below and 3 miles across town, Maya Johnson was living an entirely different kind of silence. The quiet in her small apartment wasn't expensive. It was earned, carved out of a day that had started at 6 a.m. with her day job at the community center and was ending at 11 p.m. with paint still wet under her fingernails. She stood before her latest canvas, a piece she'd been working on for months between shifts. The painting showed hands of different colors reaching toward each other across a dark space, almost touching but not quite. Story of my life, she thought, wiping her hands on a rag that had seen too many colors to remember its original white. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Rent money coming Thursday. Thank you for covering us again. Love you. She smiled despite the exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. Maya was used to being the bridge, between her family and their needs, between her dreams and her reality, between the world she lived in and the world she painted. At 28, she perfected the art of stretching herself thin while making it look effortless. Her reflection in the darkened window showed a woman who carried beauty like a quiet strength, warm brown skin that glowed even under fluorescent lights, natural hair pulled back in a way that framed intelligent eyes that saw too much and forgave too easily. She was the kind of beautiful that stopped traffic, but somehow remained invisible to the people who mattered in the art world she was fighting to enter. Maya glanced at the acceptance letter pinned to her refrigerator. Her artwork had been selected for display in the lobby of the Cross-Continental Hotel downtown. It wasn't a gallery, but it was exposure. It was hope. And tomorrow, she'd hang her pieces in a space where powerful people walked daily, praying that someone would see her work and see her. One chance, she whispered to her reflection. That's all I need. Just one person to really see. She didn't know that 23 floors above the city, a man was staring out his window making almost the same wish, to be seen for who he was, not what he owned. Neither knew that tomorrow would bring them face to face in a moment that would crack both their carefully constructed worlds wide open. The marble floor of the Cross-Continental Hotel lobby felt like ice against Maya's knees as she knelt beside the collapsed man. Around her, expensive shoes shuffled nervously, their owners maintaining the particular distance wealthy people kept from inconvenience, close enough to appear concerned, far enough to avoid responsibility. "Someone call 911, Maya said firmly, her voice cutting through the murmur of speculation. Her hands found the man's wrist, fingers pressing gently against his pulse point. Strong and steady, but his skin was clammy, cold. "Miss, you shouldn't," a security guard approached, but Maya held up her free hand without looking away from the unconscious man. "He's breathing fine, pulse is strong. Looks like exhaustion, maybe dehydration." Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd grown up in a house where medical emergencies were handled with prayer and practical knowledge because doctors cost money. "Sir? Can you hear me?" The man's eyelids fluttered. Maya found herself looking into eyes the color of storm clouds, gray, turbulent, and surprisingly vulnerable. For a moment, neither of them moved. His gaze fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Hey there," she said softly, the same tone she'd use with a frightened child. "You're okay. You're safe." Adrian Cross, though Maya didn't know his name yet, stared up at this woman whose face was the first thing he'd seen upon waking, and felt something shift inside his chest. Her eyes held genuine concern, not the calculating worry of someone wondering how his collapse might affect their stock portfolio. Her touch on his wrist was gentle, careful, kind. His voice came out as a rasp. He tried to sit up, and her other hand moved to his shoulder, steadying him. "Easy. Take your time." Maya's thumb unconsciously stroked across his wrist where she still held it, a gesture so natural she didn't realize she was doing it. "What's your name?" The question hit him like a revelation. When was the last time someone had asked his name without already knowing his net worth? "Adrian," he said, and it felt strange on his tongue. Just Adrian, not Adrian Cross of Cross Industries, not the Adrian Cross whose every movement was tracked by financial reporters. "I'm Maya." She smiled, and Adrian felt warmth spread through his chest like whiskey. "Do you remember what happened?" He remembered the endless meetings, the fake smiles, the crushing weight of another day spent being useful rather than wanted. He remembered deciding to walk through his own hotel lobby like a ghost in his own life, feeling more alone surrounded by luxury than he ever had in his empty penthouse. "I think I just stopped," he said, the honesty surprising them both. Maya's eyes softened with understanding. Around them, the crowd was dispersing, having realized this wasn't the kind of drama that would make for good social media content. The paramedics arrived, professional and efficient, but Adrian found himself reluctant to let go of Maya's grounding presence. "You should go with them," Maya said, though her hand lingered on his shoulder. "Get checked out properly." "Will you?" Adrian started, then stopped. "Will you what? Come with me? Stay with me? Remember me?" He couldn't remember the last time he'd wanted to ask someone to stay. Maya saw the question in his eyes, the same lost expression she'd seen in her own mirror too many times. "I'll make sure they take good care of you," she promised. As the paramedics helped Adrian to his feet, he turned back to her. "Thank you, Maya." The way he said her name, like he was memorizing it, like it mattered, made her heart skip. "Take care of yourself, Adrian." She watched as they guided him toward the exit, noting the way he moved like someone unaccustomed to being cared for, like someone who'd forgotten how to let himself be helped. Only after they were gone did Maya remember why she was there. She looked up at the wall where her paintings now hung, 5 pieces that represented years of dreaming, of believing that her voice mattered in a world that often ignored voices like hers. The centerpiece was her favorite, almost touching, those reaching hands she'd finished just last night. "Excuse me." A hotel manager approached, clipboard in hand, all business. "Are you the artist? We need to discuss the installation placement." Maya nodded, but her mind was still on storm gray eyes and the way Adrian had looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years. She didn't know that in the ambulance, Adrian was thinking the same about her, that her kindness had felt like sunlight after living in darkness for so long. Neither of them knew that this moment, her hands on his wrist, his eyes meeting hers in vulnerable gratitude, would replay in their dreams for weeks to come. Neither knew that they'd both just experienced something they'd thought was impossible, being seen, truly seen, by a complete stranger. As Maya discussed placement with a hotel manager, she found herself glancing toward the lobby doors, wondering about the man named Adrian who'd looked at her like she'd saved his life by simply treating him like a human being. In the ambulance, Adrian stared at his wrist where her touch still seemed to linger, feeling more alive than he had in months. Sometimes the most profound moments happen in the spaces between one heartbeat and the next, in lobbies and emergencies, and the simple act of one person choosing to care for another. The check arrived by courier the next morning, crisp, corporate, with more zeros than Maya had seen in one place in her entire life. The note attached was equally crisp. Thank you for your assistance yesterday. Adrian Cross, CEO, Cross Industries. Maya stared at the check, her coffee growing cold in her hands. Adrian Cross. The Adrian Cross. The man whose hotel lobby currently displayed her art, whose company owned half the buildings she passed on her way to work, whose face graced magazine covers with headlines like the untouchable billionaire. The man whose pulse had fluttered under her fingers like a frightened bird. He thinks he can pay me off, she said aloud to her empty apartment, though the words felt wrong even as she spoke them. The amount wasn't insulting, it was generous, thoughtful even. But something about reducing yesterday's moment to a transaction made her chest tighten with disappointment. She'd spent the night replaying those storm-gray eyes, the way he'd said her name like it mattered. Now she wondered if she'd imagined the vulnerability she'd seen there. Maybe this was just how billionaires operated. Experience human kindness, write a check, move on. Maya folded the check and placed it in her drawer without depositing it. If Adrian Cross wanted to pretend yesterday was just another business transaction, she wouldn't stop him. But she wouldn't cash in on what had felt like the most genuine moment she'd experienced in months, either. 20 minutes across town, Adrian sat in his office, staring at his phone. He'd written and deleted 17 different text messages to Linda, asking her to find out more about Maya Johnson, the artist whose work now graced his hotel, the woman whose kindness had left him feeling like he'd been holding his breath for years and only just remembered how to breathe. But every message felt wrong, invasive. What was he supposed to say? Please find out everything about the woman who treated me like a human being yesterday. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Cross? The quarterly reports you requested. Send them in. Adrian forced his voice back to its usual controlled tone, burying the memory of how it had felt to say just his first name and have it be enough. The morning progressed with its usual parade of meetings, each person who entered his office treating him with that familiar combination of deference and calculation. By lunch, Adrian had almost convinced himself that yesterday's moment had been an aberration, a brief lapse in judgment brought on by stress and exhaustion. Almost. But then he found himself walking through his hotel lobby during his lunch break, ostensibly checking on operations but really hoping to catch another glimpse of Maya's artwork. He stopped in front of Almost Touching, studying the reaching hands that seemed to capture something essential about longing and connection. Beautiful work, isn't it? The hotel manager appeared beside him. The artist is quite talented. Maya Johnson. She was here yesterday, actually, when you had your episode. Adrian's carefully constructed walls trembled. She was here to install these? Yes, sir. Very professional, very gracious. She seemed quite concerned about you. The manager paused. She refused to leave until she knew you were going to be all right. The walls cracked a little more. Maya hadn't just helped him. She'd stayed worried, cared about a stranger's well-being. When was the last time someone had worried about him without an ulterior motive? Did she? Adrian stopped himself. He was Adrian Cross. He didn't chase after women, especially women who lived in completely different worlds. He solved problems with money and moved on. That's how this worked. But that night, alone in his penthouse, Adrian found himself staring out at the city and thinking about gentle hands and eyes that had seen past his reputation to the man underneath. He thought about the check he'd sent, his automatic response to genuine kindness, and for the first time wondered if he'd insulted the one person who'd treated him with authentic care. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her apartment, paintbrush suspended over a new canvas. She'd been trying to start a new piece for hours, but her mind kept drifting to yesterday's moment in the lobby. The way Adrian had looked lost, then grateful, then almost hopeful. He's a billionaire, Maya, she told herself firmly. Different world, different problems, different everything. But her traitorous heart remembered the vulnerability in his voice when he'd said he'd just stopped. That wasn't the voice of someone who had everything. It was the voice of someone who had nothing that mattered. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Did you see the news? Adrian Cross collapsed at his own hotel yesterday. That's the hotel with your art, right? Wild coincidence. Maya's chest tightened. So it was public now, his moment of weakness reduced to a gossip item, probably with speculation about his health, his company, his personal life. She thought about how exposed he must feel, how violated. Without thinking, she found herself reaching for her phone, then stopping. What was she going to do? Call a billionaire to check if he was okay? Text him? She didn't even have his number. But the urge to reach out, to offer the same comfort he'd seemed to find in her presence yesterday, was almost overwhelming. Both of them went to bed that night thinking about the other, both convinced that yesterday's connection had been one-sided, both fighting the pull they felt toward someone who represented everything they thought they couldn't have. Neither knew that across the city, the other was staring at the ceiling, replaying the same moment, wondering if they'd imagined the spark that had passed between them in that hotel lobby, the moment when two strangers had seen past surfaces to the real people underneath. Maya's phone rang at 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring her from dreams of storm-gray eyes and gentle touches. The number was unfamiliar, corporate. Miss Johnson? This is Linda Martinez, assistant to Mr. Adrian Cross. Mr. Cross would like to schedule a meeting regarding your artwork currently displayed in the Cross-Continental Hotel. Maya's heart stuttered. She'd been expecting this call for a week, ever since the check had arrived and she'd stubbornly refused to cash it. Now he wanted to meet. Probably to tell her that her art didn't belong in his pristine lobby, that their moment had been a mistake, that she should take her paintings and her uncashed check and disappear back into obscurity. What kind of meeting? Maya asked, proud of how steady her voice sounded. Mr. Cross is interested in commissioning additional pieces. He'd like to discuss the possibility of expanding your display to other Cross properties. Would you be available this afternoon? Maya nearly dropped the phone. Commission work? Multiple properties? This was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Her struggling finances, her career, her entire trajectory as an artist. Yes. Yes, I'm available. Excellent. 2 o'clock at the Cross-Continental, penthouse level. I'll send you the details. After hanging up, Maya stared at her reflection in her bathroom mirror, trying to reconcile this professional opportunity with the memory of Adrian's vulnerable eyes. Maybe she'd been wrong about his motives. Maybe the check hadn't been dismissive. Maybe it had been respect, payment for services rendered. Maybe this meeting was purely business. And maybe you're lying to yourself, a voice in her head whispered. Maybe you want to see him again just as much as he apparently wants to see you. At exactly 2 p.m., Maya stepped off the elevator into the penthouse level of the Cross-Continental, her portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. The space was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, furniture that probably cost more than her annual rent, art that she recognized from museum catalogs. And there was Adrian, standing with his back to her, silhouetted against those massive windows. He'd changed from the vulnerable man she'd met in the lobby into something more polished, more controlled. His suit was perfectly tailored, his posture straight and commanding. This was Adrian Cross, the CEO, not Adrian the man who'd needed her help. Miss Johnson. He turned, and Maya's breath caught. Those eyes were the same, storm-gray and intense, but now they were guarded, professional. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity, Maya replied, matching his formal tone even as her heart raced. They stood facing each other for a moment, the space between them charged with unspoken recognition. Maya wondered if he was remembering her hands on his wrist, the way she'd stroked his pulse point without thinking. Adrian wondered if she could see past this boardroom version of himself to the man who'd felt more alive in her presence than he had in years. Please sit. Adrian gestured to a seating area that probably cost more than Maya's car. Can I offer you anything? Coffee, water. I'm fine, thank you. Maya settled into the chair, opening her portfolio with practiced professionalism. I understand you're interested in commissioning additional work? Adrian sat across from her, maintaining careful distance. Your pieces in the lobby have received significant attention. Guests, employees, business associates, everyone seems drawn to them. Are you drawn to them? Maya wanted to ask. Or are you just drawn to me? Instead, she nodded. I'm glad they're being well received. The emotional impact is considerable. Adrian's voice carried a weight that made Maya look up from her portfolio. Particularly, almost touching. There's something about it that makes people pause, really look. Maya's fingers stilled on her sketches. What do you see when you look at it? The question hung between them, loaded with more meaning than a simple discussion of art should carry. Adrian studied her face, seeing the same direct honesty that had comforted him in the lobby, the same eyes that had looked at him with genuine concern rather than calculation. "I see." He paused, the CEO mask slipping slightly. "Hope. And distance. The space between what we want and what we think we can have." Maya's breath caught. That was exactly what she'd been trying to capture, that moment of almost connection, the reaching across divides that seemed impossible to cross. "Most people see it as sad," she said quietly. "It's not sad," Adrian said, his voice softer now. "It's brave. Reaching for something even when you're not sure you'll be able to touch it." Their eyes met across the coffee table, and suddenly the professional pretense felt as fragile as glass. Maya saw past his expensive suit to the man who'd looked lost and grateful in equal measure. Adrian saw past her careful composure to the woman whose kindness had felt like coming home. "I never cashed your check," Maya said suddenly. Adrian's eyebrows rose. "Why not?" "Because what happened in that lobby wasn't a transaction." The words came out stronger than she'd intended. "I didn't help you because I expected payment. I helped you because you needed help." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. "Most people in my life help me because they expect something in return. I'm not most people." "No," Adrian agreed, his voice rough with something like wonder. "You're not." The silence stretched between them, comfortable now instead of tense. Maya found herself studying the way afternoon light caught in his hair, the way his hands rested on his knees. Strong hands, she noticed, with a small scar on his left knuckle that made him seem more human, more real. "This commission," Maya said carefully. "Is it real? Or is it an excuse?" Adrian's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Can't it be both?" Maya laughed despite herself, a sound that seemed to surprise them both with its warmth. "I suppose it could be." "I want to know more about your work," Adrian said, leaning forward slightly. "About what drives you to create pieces that make people feel so much." "That could take a while," Maya warned. "I have time." Adrian's eyes met hers steadily. "More time than I've had in years, actually." Maya opened her portfolio, but instead of showing him her most commercial pieces, she found herself pulling out the deeply personal work, sketches of her family, paintings that captured the struggle and beauty of her neighborhood, pieces that revealed her heart rather than just her skill. "Tell me about this one," Adrian said, pointing to a small watercolor of an elderly woman's hands. "My grandmother," Maya said, her voice soft with memory. "She raised me after my parents died. These hands taught me everything: how to cook, how to braid my hair, how to see beauty in broken things." Adrian studied the painting with the same intensity he'd probably once applied to quarterly reports. "She looks like she had strong hands." "The strongest." Maya glanced up at him. "What about you? Who taught you to see beauty in things?" The question seemed to catch Adrian off guard. He was quiet for so long that Maya wondered if she'd overstepped, pushed too hard past his professional boundaries. "No one," he said finally. "I think maybe that's why your art affects me so much. You paint like someone who was taught to look for light in dark places. I was taught to build walls so high that no light could get in." Maya felt her heart clench at the loneliness in his voice. "Walls can be torn down." "Can they?" Adrian's eyes met hers, and Maya saw the same vulnerability that had drawn her to him in the lobby. "Even when they've been standing for 34 years. "Especially then," Maya said firmly. "Sometimes the oldest walls are ready to fall. They just need someone willing to start removing the stones." The commission meeting had stretched into 3 hours without either of them noticing. Coffee had turned to wine, professional distance had melted into genuine conversation, and Maya found herself curled into the corner of Adrian's impossibly expensive couch, her shoes kicked off, talking about art and dreams with an ease that surprised them both. "Tell me something," Maya said, swirling the wine in her glass. "When did you stop painting?" Adrian's hand stilled halfway to his mouth. "What makes you think I ever painted?" Maya gestured toward a corner of the penthouse where she'd noticed something earlier, an easel, half hidden behind a decorative screen, covered with a drop cloth like a ghost from another life. "That's not just furniture. And you look at art the way artists look at art, not the way collectors do." Adrian followed her gaze, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. I haven't touched that thing in 15 years. Why not? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian set down his wine glass, his fingers drumming against his thigh in the first nervous gesture Maya had seen from him. My father destroyed my last painting when I was 19, he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. Told me that Cross men built empires, not pretty pictures. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. What was the painting of? Adrian was quiet for so long that Maya thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. My mother. It was a portrait of my mother. The pieces clicked together in Maya's mind with horrible clarity. She died when I was 8. Adrian's eyes fixed on some point beyond the windows. Cancer. My father, he didn't handle grief well. Threw himself into work, into building the company. Any reminder of her was too painful for him to bear. Maya set down her wine glass, her artist's heart breaking for the boy who tried to keep his mother alive on canvas, only to have that love destroyed by someone who should have cherished it. Adrian. He wasn't wrong, though. Adrian's voice turned bitter. Look at what I built instead. Cross Industries employs 30,000 people. My paintings only ever made one person happy, and she was already gone. That's not true. Maya's voice was fierce, startling them both. Art doesn't exist to employ people or make money. It exists to make us remember what it feels like to be human. Adrian looked at her then, really looked, and Maya saw years of buried pain in his eyes. I haven't felt human in a very long time. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Maya felt her defenses crumbling, the professional distance she'd been trying to maintain dissolving completely. This wasn't just about attraction or even connection, this was about recognition. She saw herself in his pain, saw the same fear of being too much, too vulnerable, too real for the world to accept. Can I show you something? Maya asked impulsively. Without waiting for an answer, she reached for her phone, scrolling through photos until she found what she was looking for. She held the screen toward Adrian, a picture of a small painting, clearly created by child's hands, showing a woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. I painted this when I was 7, Maya said softly. 2 months after my parents died in a car accident. My grandmother found me in the kitchen, covered in finger paint, crying over this mess of colors. Adrian studied the photo, seeing past the childish technique to the love and loss captured in every brushstroke. She didn't tell me it was good or bad, Maya continued. She just asked me what I saw when I looked at my mom. And when I told her that I saw sunshine and hugs and the way she hummed while she cooked, my grandmother said, "Then you painted exactly what you were supposed to paint." Your grandmother sounds like she was wise. She was. But she was also wrong about something. Maya's voice grew quieter. She told me that keeping our loved ones alive through art would always be enough. But it's not, is it? Sometimes you need more than memories. Sometimes you need someone real to see you, to choose you to stay. The vulnerability in her voice made Adrian's chest tighten. Here was this incredible woman, talented and kind and strong, carrying the same fear he'd been harboring for years, that maybe, just maybe, they weren't worth staying for. Is that why you've never married? The question slipped out before Adrian could stop it. Maya's smile was rueful. Hard to find someone who sees past the struggle to the person underneath. Most men either want to save me, which gets old fast, or they're intimidated by my independence. I've never met anyone who wanted me for more than my bank account. Adrian's honesty surprised him. Until. He didn't finish the sentence, but Maya understood. Until now. Until her. Your father, Maya said carefully. Is he still alive? Yes. Still running parts of the company, still disappointed that I never gave him grandchildren to mold into the next generation of Cross empire builders. Adrian's voice carried old wounds. He's never understood that I built all of this hoping that someday it would be enough to fill the hole left by everything he made me give up. And is it? Enough? Adrian looked around his penthouse, at the expensive art that had never made him feel the way Maya's paintings did, at the space that showcased his success but held no real warmth, at the life that looked perfect from the outside but felt empty at its core. No, he said simply. It's not. Maya reached across the space between them, her fingers finding his hand. The contact was electric, just like it had been in the hotel lobby, but now it carried the weight of shared understanding. What would be enough? Adrian looked down at their joined hands, her brown skin warm against his pale fingers, her touch gentle but sure. I used to think nothing could be. But sitting here with you, talking about things I haven't talked about in years, maybe enough isn't about having everything. Maybe it's about finding someone who sees you clearly and chooses to stay anyway. Maya's breath caught. In his words, she heard an echo of her own deepest longing, not to be someone's project or their consolation prize, but to be someone's choice. Someone's person. Adrian, she began, but he shook his head. I know this is crazy, he said quickly. I know we barely know each other, that we come from different worlds, that this probably seems like another rich man thinking he can buy whatever he wants. Stop. Maya's voice was firm, but her eyes were soft. What if it doesn't seem crazy? What if it seems like the first real thing that's happened to either of us in years? Adrian's eyes searched her face, looking for the doubt or calculation he'd learned to expect, finding only honesty and hope and something that looked dangerously like the beginning of love. Then we're both in trouble, he said softly. Maya's smile was radiant. The best kind of trouble. Outside the penthouse windows, the city sparkled in the growing dusk, full of possibility and promise. Neither of them knew that in just a few days, that possibility would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. Tonight, there was only this, two people who'd found in each other something they'd both stopped believing existed. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a dream Maya was afraid to wake up from. Adrian had insisted on personally overseeing the expansion of her art to 3 more Cross properties, which meant daily meetings that stretched into long lunches, working dinners that forgot to focus on work, and conversations that revealed layers of each other they'd kept hidden from the world. Maya discovered that Adrian made terrible coffee but exceptional scrambled eggs, that he still remembered every line of poetry his mother had read to him, and that when he laughed, really laughed, not the polished chuckle he used in business meetings, his whole face transformed into something boyish and unguarded. Adrian learned that Maya hummed unconsciously when she painted, that she kept a small cactus named Winston on her windowsill because everyone deserves something green to take care of, and that her laugh was like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. Tell me about the worst painting you ever made, Adrian said one Thursday evening as they sat in his penthouse, surrounded by Chinese takeout containers and Maya's latest sketches for the hotel installations. Maya nearly choked on her low mane. Oh God. I was 16, thought I was going to revolutionize abstract expressionism. I spent 3 months on this monstrosity I called the anguish of being. It was supposed to represent the teenage condition. And did it? It looked like someone had thrown up rainbows on canvas. My art teacher took one look at it and said, Maya, sometimes anguish is just indigestion. Maya collapsed into giggles, the memory still mortifying and hilarious in equal measure. Adrian's laughter joined hers, rich and warm. I would have loved to see that painting. No, you would not. Trust me. Maya wiped tears from her eyes. Your turn. Worst business decision you ever made. Adrian's expression grew thoughtful. I once bought an entire failing restaurant chain because the owner reminded me of my grandfather, this sweet old Italian man who just wanted to feed people good food. Lost $40 million, but that man got to retire with dignity and his employees kept their jobs. Maya stared at him. That's not a bad business decision. That's beautiful. Tell that to my board of directors. They still bring it up in meetings as an example of why emotion has no place in business. Your board of directors are idiots, Maya said firmly, reaching for another spring roll. The world needs more people willing to lose $40 million on kindness. Something in Adrian's chest loosened at her words. Here was someone who not only understood his impulses toward generosity, but celebrated them. In his business world, compassion was seen as weakness. In Maya's eyes, it was strength. Dance with me, Adrian said suddenly. Maya looked around the penthouse, noting the distinct lack of music. There's no music playing. There's always music, Adrian said, standing and extending his hand. You just have to know how to listen for it. Maya let him pull her to her feet, laughing as he led her to the open space near the windows. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. I can't hear anything, Maya protested, but she didn't resist when Adrian's arms came around her waist. Listen harder. His voice was soft, close to her ear. There's the rhythm of traffic 23 floors down. The hum of the building's ventilation system. Your heartbeat. His hand settled over her heart, and Maya's breath caught mine. And suddenly Maya could hear it, not music exactly, but a rhythm, a pulse of life and possibility that seemed to synchronize between them. They swayed together in the silence that wasn't silence, Adrian's chin resting on top of her head, Maya's arms wrapped around his waist. I haven't danced since high school, Maya murmured against his chest. Neither have I. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. I forgot how it felt to want to. They moved together slowly, learning the shape of each other, the way Maya fit perfectly against Adrian's tall frame, the way Adrian's hand seemed made to span the curve of Maya's waist. Outside, the city pulsed with its relentless energy, but inside this moment, time felt suspended. Adrian, Maya said softly, pulling back to look at him. Yeah. This is real, isn't it? This thing between us. Adrian's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. Good, Maya breathed. Because I'm falling for you, and I need to know I'm not falling alone. Adrian's answer was a kiss, soft at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he held too tight. But Maya kissed him back with a certainty that made his restraint crumble, her hands fisting in his shirt to pull him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. You're not falling alone, he whispered. I've been falling since the moment you touched my wrist in that lobby. Maya's smile was radiant. What are we going to do about it? I have absolutely no idea, Adrian admitted. I've never felt like this before. I don't know the rules. Then we'll make our own rules, Maya said, her voice fierce with determination. We'll figure it out together. That night, Maya fell asleep on Adrian's couch, her head pillowed on his shoulder, one hand still clutching his shirt as if to make sure he wouldn't disappear while she slept. Adrian stayed awake longer, watching the peaceful expression on her face, memorizing the way she looked curled against him like she belonged there. For the first time in his adult life, Adrian Cross felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He had no way of knowing that across town, photographers were already stalking outside Maya's apartment building, that gossip columnists were crafting headlines about Cross's mystery woman, that his father was receiving phone calls from board members concerned about potential complications to the family business. The storm was building, but for now there was only peace, two people who'd found each other against all odds, creating their own small pocket of happiness in a world that would soon try its best to tear them apart. The photograph hit the internet at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that started like every other perfect morning Maya had grown accustomed to. She was in Adrian's kitchen, wearing one of his dress shirts and humming while she made coffee, when his phone started buzzing with the persistence of an angry wasp. Ignore it, Adrian mumbled from where he sat at the breakfast bar, sketching in the art pad Maya had bought him the week before, his first tentative steps back toward the creative self his father had crushed decades ago. But the buzzing didn't stop. It intensified, joined by Maya's phone, then the penthouse landline, until the symphony of notifications became impossible to ignore. Maya picked up her phone first. 17 missed calls from her sister, 43 text messages, and a string of social media notifications that made her stomach drop. The first message from her sister was simple: Maya, don't go online. Call me. But Maya was already opening her browser, her hands shaking as the headlines loaded. Cross's secret lover. Billionaire's interracial romance rocks business world. From lobby to love nest, how a hotel collapse led to Adrian Cross's shocking new relationship. Black artist or gold digger. The woman who captured Cross Industries' heart. The photos were everywhere, Maya leaving Adrian's building, their hands intertwined as they walked through Central Park, the moment outside her apartment when he'd kissed her goodbye the night before, thinking they were hidden in the shadows. Maya. Adrian's voice sounded far away. What is it? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She just handed him her phone and watched his face crumble as he scrolled through the headlines, the comment section already filling with speculation that ranged from cruel to vicious. Adrian's own phone rang then, not the buzzing of notifications but the sharp, demanding ring of his business line. The caller ID showed his father's office number. Don't answer it, Maya whispered, but Adrian was already swiping to accept the call. Adrian. His father's voice was cold enough to freeze the coffee in Maya's mug. My office. Now. Dad, I can explain. No explanations. No discussions. Just get here. Alone. The line went dead. Adrian set down his phone with the careful precision of someone trying not to shatter. Maya watched the transformation happen in real time. The warm, open man she'd fallen in love with retreating behind walls of ice and steel, the CEO mask sliding back into place. "I have to go," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Adrian, wait." Maya reached for him, but he stepped back, and the small movement felt like a chasm opening between them. "We knew this might happen. We talked about this." Talking about it and living it are different things. Adrian's voice was already changing, becoming clipped, professional. "I need to handle this." "Handle this?" Maya's voice rose. "Handle what, exactly? The fact that we fell in love? The fact that I'm black? The fact that your world can't accept that you chose me? It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Maya slammed her coffee mug down, hot liquid splashing across the marble counter. "Either you love me enough to fight for us, or you don't. Everything else is just noise." Adrian flinched as if she'd slapped him. "You don't understand the pressure." "I understand perfectly." Maya's voice turned quiet, deadly. "I understand that when things get difficult, you're going to choose the easy path. I understand that you're more concerned about what your father and your board think than about what we have. That's not fair." "Fair?" Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fair would be you standing by my side and facing this together. Fair would be you being proud to love me instead of acting like I'm some embarrassing secret that got exposed." Adrian's jaw clenched. "I never said you were embarrassing." "You didn't have to say it." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. "It's written all over your face. You're already calculating how to minimize the damage, aren't you? How to spin this so your precious company doesn't suffer." The accusation hit too close to home because part of Adrian's mind was already working through damage control scenarios. Stock prices, board reactions, client concerns. 30 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight, even for love. "I have responsibilities," he said weakly. "So do I. I have a responsibility to myself not to be with someone who's ashamed of me." Maya started gathering her things, her movements sharp with hurt and anger. "I have a responsibility not to let anyone, not even you, make me feel like I'm not worth fighting for." "Maya, please." "No." She turned to face him fully, and Adrian saw his own heartbreak reflected in her eyes. "I've spent my whole life being invisible to people who matter, being told I should be grateful for scraps of attention from people who think they're doing me a favor by noticing me. I won't do that with you." "It's not like that." "Then prove it." The challenge hung between them like a gauntlet thrown down. "Come with me. Walk out of here together, face the cameras together, tell the world that you love me and you don't care what they think about it." Adrian opened his mouth to say yes, to choose love over fear, to be the man Maya deserved. But the words wouldn't come. 34 years of being Adrian Cross, CEO, heir to an empire, responsible for thousands of jobs and billions in assets. It all crashed down on him like a tidal wave. I can't," he whispered. Maya nodded as if she'd been expecting this answer all along. "Then I guess we have nothing left to talk about." She walked toward the elevator, her back straight and proud despite the tears streaming down her face. Adrian wanted to run after her, to fall to his knees and beg her not to leave, to choose her over everything else. But his feet felt rooted to the floor, paralyzed by a lifetime of fear and conditioning. "Maya." Her name came out broken, desperate. She paused at the elevator doors, but didn't turn around. "When you decide who you really are, Adrian Cross the CEO, or Adrian the man who paints and dances and falls in love, call me. But don't call me until then, because I won't settle for half of you anymore." The elevator doors closed with a soft chime that sounded like the end of everything beautiful. Adrian stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by the remnants of their perfect morning. 2 coffee cups, scattered sketches, the lingering scent of her perfume. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city continued its relentless pulse, indifferent to the fact that his world had just shattered into a million irreplaceable pieces. His phone rang again. His father, demanding answers. The board, demanding explanations. The world, demanding he choose between love and legacy. And for the first time in his adult life, Adrian Cross had no idea what to do. The Cross Industries boardroom had never felt more like a tomb. Adrian sat at the head of the mahogany table, surrounded by 12 faces that looked carved from the same expensive stone as the building's facade. His father, Richard Cross, presided from the opposite end like a judge preparing to deliver a death sentence. The stock has dropped 8% in 3 days, board member Patricia Wentworth announced, her voice crisp with disapproval. Our investors are concerned about instability in leadership. Instability, Adrian repeated flatly. Because I fell in love. Because you've allowed personal entanglements to overshadow your professional responsibilities, his father corrected, ice threading through every word. Because you've given our competitors ammunition to question your judgment. Adrian stared down the table at the man who'd raised him, shaped him, molded him into the perfect heir to the Cross Empire. Richard Cross looked exactly like Adrian would in 25 years, silver-haired, sharp-suited, successful by every metric that mattered to the business world. But looking at him now, Adrian saw something else, a man who'd chosen power over love so long ago that he'd forgotten the difference between the two. The Hartman Group has already expressed concerns about moving forward with the merger, another board member added. They're questioning whether Cross Industries maintains the appropriate values for a partnership of this magnitude. Appropriate values, Adrian said slowly. You mean white values? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Adrian, his father's voice carried the weight of command he'd perfected over 4 decades in business. This infatuation. Don't. Adrian's voice cut through the boardroom like a blade. Don't you dare call what I feel for Maya an infatuation. Then what would you call it? Richard Cross leaned forward, his gray eyes, so like Adrian's but infinitely colder, fixed on his son. What would you call a 3-week relationship with a woman who was nobody until she caught your attention in a hotel lobby? Adrian's hands clenched into fists under the table. I'd call it the first real thing I've felt in 15 years. Real. Richard's laugh was bitter. Your mother thought her art was real too. Look where that got her. The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. Don't you dare bring Mom into this. Your mother died because she was too busy chasing dreams to take care of her health. Too busy painting pretty pictures to notice the lump in her breast until it was too late. I won't watch you destroy everything we've built for the same kind of fantasy. Adrian stood so abruptly that his chair rolled back and hit the wall. Mom died because cancer is a disease, not because she loved beauty. And you know what? Maybe if she'd lived, I wouldn't have turned into the kind of man who needs a board meeting to decide whether love is worth fighting for. Sit down, Adrian. Richard's voice was deadly quiet. No. Adrian remained standing, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt taller than his father. I'm done sitting down. I'm done letting you and this room full of soulless suits decide what's best for my life. Your life. Patricia Wentworth's voice was sharp with incredulity. Your life is Cross Industries. Your life is the 30,000 people who depend on this company for their livelihoods. Your life is the shareholders who trusted you with their investments. My life, Adrian said quietly, is whatever I choose to make it. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city where Maya was somewhere below, probably painting her hurt into something beautiful while he sat in this sterile room debating whether she was worth loving. If you choose her, his father said, his voice carrying the finality of an ultimatum, you choose to walk away from everything. The company, the family name, the legacy your grandfather and I spent our lives building. Adrian closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 4 generations of Cross ambition pressing down on his shoulders. He thought of his grandfather, who'd built the first Cross hotel with his bare hands and a dream. He thought of all the employees who depended on Cross Industries for their paychecks, their benefits, their futures. Then he thought of Maya's laugh. Her hands touching his face in the darkness. The way she'd looked at his abandoned easel and seen not failure, but potential. The way she'd made him feel like Adrian, the man was worth more than Adrian Cross the CEO could ever be. You know what the difference is between you and me, Dad? Adrian turned back to face the room. You think love is a weakness. But Maya didn't make me weaker. She made me remember what strength actually looks like. Strength. Richard's voice was mocking. Strength is making hard choices. Strength is putting duty before desire. No, Adrian said firmly. Strength is being brave enough to choose happiness over habit. Strength is loving someone enough to become worthy of them. He looked around the boardroom at the faces that had shaped his life, the people who'd taught him that success was measured in quarterly earnings and market share. Good people, most of them, but people who'd forgotten that businesses existed to serve life, not the other way around. "I'm resigning from the board," Adrian announced. "Effective immediately." The room erupted in shocked murmurs, but Adrian continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm stepping down as CEO and selling my controlling interest back to the company. Someone else can run Cross Industries, someone who wants to sacrifice their humanity for market dominance." "You're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life," his father said, standing slowly. "The only mistake I've made," Adrian replied, "was waiting this long to make it." He walked toward the boardroom door, feeling lighter with each step, as if he was shedding layers of expectation and obligation that had been weighing him down for decades. "Where are you going?" Patricia called after him. "To find the woman I love," Adrian said without turning around. "To apologize for being a coward. To ask her if she'll take a chance on a former billionaire who just remembered what actually matters. And if she says no," his father's voice followed him to the door. Adrian paused, his hand on the handle. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of a second chance." He walked out of the boardroom, past the assistants and executives who stared at him like he'd lost his mind, past the portraits of previous Cross Industries leaders who'd all chosen duty over dreams, past the life he'd been living on autopilot for 34 years. In the elevator, Adrian pulled out his phone and looked at Maya's contact information. His finger hovered over the call button for a long moment before he closed the phone and put it away. Words weren't going to fix this. Grand gestures weren't going to undo the hurt he'd caused. If he wanted Maya back, he was going to have to prove that he'd changed, not with promises, but with actions. It was time to show the world, and more importantly show Maya, exactly who Adrian Cross really was when he stopped trying to be who everyone else expected him to be. Maya had been painting for 6 hours straight when the knock came at her apartment door. Her latest canvas was a storm of colors, deep purples and angry reds swirling around a center of gold that refused to be consumed by the darkness surrounding it. She called it After the Storm, though she wasn't sure if it represented destruction or hope. The knock came again, soft this time, almost hesitant. Maya wiped her paint-stained hands on her jeans and walked to the door, expecting her sister or maybe a delivery. The last person she expected to see through the peephole was Adrian Cross. But there he was, looking nothing like the polished CEO she'd fallen in love with or the frightened man who'd let her walk away. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a paint-splattered button-down that looked suspiciously familiar. His hair was disheveled, his eyes tired but determined. Maya's heart clenched, but she kept the chain lock engaged as she opened the door a crack. "What are you doing here, Adrian?" "I quit," he said simply. "What?" "I quit Cross Industries. Resigned from the board, stepped down as CEO, sold my stake in the company." Adrian's voice was steady, but Maya could see the enormity of what he'd done written in the tension around his eyes. "I chose you, Maya. I chose us." Maya stared at him through the crack in the door, her mind reeling. You can't just throw away your entire life because we had a fight." "I didn't throw away my life," Adrian said quietly. "I reclaimed it. There's a difference." Against her better judgment, Maya found herself sliding off the chain lock and opening the door fully. Adrian looked smaller somehow without the armor of his expensive clothes and corporate title, but also more real, more present than she'd ever seen him. "Adrian, what you've done, that's insane. Your family, your legacy." "My family disowned me the moment I walked out of that boardroom," Adrian said, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "And the legacy? Turns out I don't want to be remembered as the man who built an empire, but couldn't love a woman brave enough to see past his walls." Maya stepped back, allowing him into her small apartment. It felt strange having him in her space, this man who'd lived in penthouses and boardrooms now standing in her tiny kitchen with its mismatched dishes and second-hand furniture. "How did you even find me?" Maya asked. "The reporters have been camped outside this building for days." Adrian's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Turns out when you're no longer a billionaire, you become a lot less interesting to photographers. I walked right past them." "So what now?" Maya crossed her arms, trying to protect her heart from the hope that was blooming in her chest despite her best efforts. "You gave up everything for me, And now you expect me to just, what? Fall into your arms and pretend the last week didn't happen. No, Adrian said, his voice gentle but firm. I expect you to let me prove that I've learned who I really am without all the noise. I expect you to let me show you that the man who fell in love with you in this apartment, who danced with you to silence, who wanted to paint again because you believed he could, that man is real. That man is who I choose to be. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Adrian, I can't be the reason you lost everything. That's too much pressure, too much responsibility. You're not the reason, Adrian interrupted, stepping closer. You're the catalyst. You helped me realize that I was already lost. I'd been lost for years, maybe decades. I was just too afraid to admit it. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, offering it to Maya with hands that trembled slightly. I painted this morning. For the first time in 15 years, I painted. Maya unfolded the paper with careful fingers. It was a watercolor sketch, rough, clearly done by hands that were remembering how to hold a brush, but beautiful in its honesty. It showed two figures reaching across a space toward each other, their fingertips finally touching. It's not very good, Adrian said quietly. I'm out of practice. But I wanted you to see that you didn't just help me remember how to love, you helped me remember how to create something beautiful. Maya stared at the painting, seeing past its technical flaws to the emotion poured into every brushstroke. This wasn't the work of someone trying to impress her or win her back through grand gestures. This was the work of someone who'd found his voice again and was using it to speak truth. Adrian, she whispered, her voice breaking. I know I hurt you, he said, moving closer until he was just an arm's length away. I know I was a coward when you needed me to be brave. I know that walking away from my old life doesn't automatically make me worthy of a place in yours. Maya looked up at him, seeing the man she'd fallen in love with, but also something new, a peace, a certainty that had been missing before. Then why are you here? Because I love you, Adrian said simply. Because you saw something in me worth saving, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to become that man. Because I'd rather be broke and happy with you than rich and empty without you. And what if it doesn't work? Maya asked, voicing the fear that had been eating at her heart. What if the world won't accept us? What if your family never forgives you? What if you wake up one day and regret giving up everything for me? Adrian's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize had started falling. Then we'll face it together. And if I wake up one day and regret anything, it'll be that I waited so long to choose love over fear. Maya searched his eyes, looking for any trace of the uncertainty that had paralyzed him in the boardroom, any shadow of regret or second-guessing. She found only love, deep, unwavering, and finally free of conditions. I don't need you to be rich, she said softly. I don't need you to have all the answers or to be perfect. I just need you to be real. I need you to choose us every day, even when it's hard. Every day, Adrian promised, his forehead resting against hers. Even when it's impossible. Even when the world tells us we don't make sense. Even when we're scared and uncertain and figuring it out as we go. Maya's smile broke free like sunrise after the longest night. Even when you make terrible coffee? Adrian laughed, the sound rich and full and completely unguarded. Even then. Though I'm hoping you'll teach me to make better coffee. I can do that, Maya said, rising on her toes to kiss him. It was different from their first kiss in the penthouse, less desperate, more certain. It tasted like new beginnings and hard-won wisdom and the particular sweetness of love that had been tested and chosen to survive. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his chin on top of Maya's head, holding her close while looking at her latest painting over her shoulder. Tell me about this one, he said softly. It's about what comes after the storm, Maya said, melting into his embrace. About finding out that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the hardest seasons. Like us. Like us. 6 months later, Maya's art was displayed in a small but prestigious gallery downtown, not because of any connection to Cross Industries, but because a young curator had fallen in love with her work at a local art fair. Adrian had been there for the opening, proudly introducing himself as Maya's boyfriend to anyone who would listen, his eyes bright with the joy of someone who'd learned the difference between being successful and being happy. He'd started a small consulting firm, helping family businesses navigate transitions without losing their souls in the process. It wasn't the empire his father had built, but it was his, and it allowed him to wake up each morning knowing his work made the world a little bit better. They'd moved in together, not to his penthouse, which he'd sold, but to a renovated loft with big windows and space for 2 easels. They painted together in the mornings, Maya teaching Adrian techniques while he helped her see her own work through fresh eyes. "Do you ever miss it?" Maya asked one evening as they stood before their latest collaborative piece, a cityscape that somehow captured both the grandeur and the humanity of the place they'd found each other. "Miss what?" "The money. The power. The life you gave up." Adrian considered the question seriously, as he did all her questions. "I miss the security sometimes," he admitted. "I miss being able to solve problems by writing a check. But I don't miss feeling empty. I don't miss wondering if people loved me or my bank account." Maya smiled, paint smudged on her cheek from where she'd absently touched her face. "For the record, I definitely love you. Your bank account was always questionable at best." Adrian laughed, pulling her into his arms. "Good thing I'm not in it for the money." "What are you in it for?" Adrian looked around their loft, at the paintings that covered every wall, at the mismatched furniture that somehow felt more like home than his penthouse ever had, at the woman in his arms who taught him that love wasn't about what you could afford to give, but what you were brave enough to risk. "Everything," he said simply. "I'm in it for everything." Outside their windows, the city pulsed with its endless rhythm of dreams and heartbreak, success and failure, people reaching for each other across all the spaces that seemed impossible to cross. But inside their small piece of the world, 2 people who'd found each other against all odds continued to paint, to love, to prove that sometimes the most beautiful art comes from the courage to start over.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed the story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.